It felt like a dance film without a dancer. Instead, they had this silk scarf representing the domestic abuse survivor, I'm guessing is what it was representing. But it was a very cool concept that they had for this film where this scarf is dancing and almost acting in a way for each of these stages. The music was haunting and beautiful, and we just had this beautiful visual of the scarf. I think it was in some kind of religious building, a church or something of the sort. A beautiful location, but the music also added to that, and the dance was beautiful and heartbreaking, even though it wasn't by an actual person. We had to sort of imagine what this person was going through by watching the scarf, which I thought was a cool concept.
It definitely highlights the phases of grief in an interesting way. The cloth is the focus, and the light is also the focus of the spotlight. Um, and we get a visual representation of every single stage. I thought it made every stage really clearly defined. For it to be such a simple premise, it was very clear what each stage was. And overall was a message for coping with domestic abuse and for dealing with the grief of that as well.
I thought the construct of the piece was very emotional with the church backdrop and obviously the choir led soundtrack. And I thought it really sort of created a sense of mood that was very effective, that created a introspective feel, but also reflecting a sense of loneliness and a sense of a potential hope. And I thought that the narrative was able to mix a lot of these ideas with the construct of the cloth, or I don't know how to explain exactly, the floating images towards the end. I thought was just sort of a good stand-in for what the intent of the piece was, and sort of the emotional intent of the piece worked quite well, matched with the visual images and the music matching it.
Good concept. The idea of the movement of a silk or chiffon wrap is used to interpret the different levels of emotion for somebody recovering from domestic abuse, as indicated at the end of the film. Creative ways were used to explore the movement of the fabric as it seems to float in midair by itself magically, and it conveys different moods so well. For instance, depression as it drags itself across the floor, or acceptance as it reaches out and then pulls itself back really quickly as if to be too frightened to make contact.
So I like how the opening scene uses orchestral voices and singing to open, particularly because the setting is Victorian-like. I like the use of text on screen to convey the story. It makes it easier for the audience to follow along, especially because it is completely non-verbal. I like how the cloth is personified and it goes on this journey. I like what it represents, as well as its person clearly going through grief and abuse. At times that can be a difficult thing to explain. So what the cloth does, it works well to convey that.
The fabric itself is a character. We don't see anybody. All we see is this fabric of our imagination, so to speak. It changes colors. It goes from a pastel red to a bold red to matching the pattern of the stained glass. I really like how bleak it becomes in depression and how it kind of bursts back into life, so to speak. You kind of see the waves of this fabric and the assortment of movement that you go through when you're grieving. And what was so interesting to this was the location, having it be in sort of a religious aspect might have some connotations here, some connections to where we go, where we grieve, what do we believe in. in order to move forward. And the little bit at the end, as the director shapes and takes form of this is essentially a PSA to domestic violence here, and kind of having this experimental take on that. I think this piece is executed very well.
I really like the contrast with the costumes, the red dress. It's absolutely powerful, very eye-catching, and the performance inside the church as well. I think it was something unique, something you don't see that much in films. The overall film, it was very stylish, very fashion, really, as I said, eye-catching.
For me, the red sheet took on the personification of a young child being pushed and pulled by abuse. The piercing, high-pitched vocal sounds also suggested this, as did the frightening intensity of the instrumentals. The church setting was also striking, with reflections of the windows on the ground. For me, it had a confessional feel to it. Glad to see that help was offered by the end.